Let's see here. Okay, we got the white pieces. What do we like? What do we like? Oof, Catalan. Joe Bava, London. King's Indian attack. All right, let's start. Let's start with knight f3. Someone suggested knight f3. I believe that was Etienne. Let's go with knight f3 to start. It's very flexible. I can still transpose to a lot of different openings. And the thing that I like most about knight f3 is that it wins a pawn by force. So that's why I've chosen knight f3. It's one of the best openings because of this. So I hope you guys are learning something. Everyone, make sure you're paying attention here. This is a very educational game that we're playing. We're going to learn a lot about how to play a game up a pawn. All right, e5 takes. We've literally won a pawn right out of the gate. Knight c6. Now, if I take and play e4, then after knight f6, we transpose to the Stafford, right? So we should naturally play our knight back to f3 to make sure we don't transpose to the Stafford. We have to use the fact that we have an extra move here. Maybe our opponent was trying to trick us into the Stafford. We're not going to fall for that. We're not going to fall for that. Pawn to f5, probably another bad habit. So our opponent unfortunately has lost their center pawn on the second move, but also moving the f pawn. I don't like the move. You know, it opens up this diagonal. Usually your f pawn is a little bit tender to start off the game. I'm going to play d4 though. I can't really play e4. I need to stake some claim in the center. So I am going to play on to d4. Opens up my bishop. And I think the best medicine for this position would be getting the bishop out to one of these two squares and then playing e3 and then getting this bishop out. So I've gone over quite a few things in, I mean, just our games that we've played thus far up till now. And most of the time, you'll hear me saying very similar things. I mean, don't be moving your f pawn. Don't be blundering center pawns. Do not be bringing your queen out as one of your first pieces. This is already a very bad sign. My opponent could improve tremendously just by like never pushing that f pawn and leaving that queen at home until other pieces are developed. Then we might see knight f6, bishop e7, castle, which would set my opponent up for much more success than they are currently having. So I'm going to play bishop g5. I mean, looks like it gains some time. Attacking the queen, I mean, this is the best way to develop. You move a piece, attack a piece, especially of higher value, and the piece has to move, and then you can make your next developing move. So he plays queen d6. He's also blocking the bishop in with that move, so I don't think the move is that good. But he does have a threat. Queen b4 hits my king and hits the b2 pawn. So I still need an answer for queen b4. As much as I would love to say that queen d6 is just an awful move and I can just continue normally, I still need to address the fact that that my opponent has made a threat. So I'm probably gonna go with knight c3 here. It deals with that and it gets a piece out, so I feel like that's kind of the best of both worlds. c3 definitely deals with it, but you know, based on my opponent's last two moves, I don't think I want to play a slow move like c3. I want to get my knight in there quickly, which may be able to participate in some of the action. Stay with us, Johnny. He's gone down to 1 bar. Stay with us, Johnny. Don't quit on me now. Stay with us, buddy. Nice move. So my bishop going back this way doesn't look too appealing right now. But I'm actually slightly interested in playing a move like bishop d2. What I was really interested in was the queen going here, and then there might be a situation like that where the queen almost gets herself trapped. So I was actually thinking about something like that. In this case, I'm not too sure that that's actually going to happen. So bishop d2 or bishop c1, both seem like my options. Bishop to d2 gives up the d4 pawn, but then I think has some aggressive follow-up options. So I'll play the bishop d2 move. I think bishop c1 is also a very fine move. Nothing wrong with bishop c1, but I'll play bishop d2, which allows him sort of back into the game a little bit from that perspective. But because of h6, a move like queen h5 check, there's not going to be g6 for him. So, you know, just as an example, maybe move like e4 after that. Okay, interesting that he does it now that my bishop has moved. Because now I can play a3. And even though it looks like I've blundered this pawn, I think that he's actually going to be in a tough spot here. So a3, queen b2, yes, we've blundered the pawn. But now I'm going to play a move which threatens to trap his queen. The queen looks like it's going to be trapped like this, but it's not, right? Because the queen has b6. The queen also looks like it's going to be trapped like this, but it's not because queen a3. But surprisingly, both of those moves win on the spot. So if I play rook b1, queen takes a3 forced, knight b5, I'm hitting the queen and I'm hitting c7. And if he wants to play queen a5, it's covered. He wants to play queen d6, the knight's covering it. So he can't actually defend both of them. So he's going to lose the pawn and then the rook. Similarly, if I play rook a2 and he plays queen b6, I play knight to d5 and I hit the queen and I hit the pawn. The only square the queen can defend that from is a5, but as you can imagine, it's covered. So in all these cases, I'm just seeing issues for the black queen. This one, black gets an extra pawn and gets to save the queen, even though they're losing material there. The reason I like rook a2 a little bit better is because I think I also have an option to trap my opponent's queen still. So rook a2 is going to force the queen to b6. Knight b5 is going to force the queen to move again. The only squares that are really on are b5 and a6. But after queen b5 or queen a6, knight c7 doesn't just win the rook, it wins the queen now. So this move does a little bit better, I think, than rook to b1. Just because it might win more than the rook in the corner. Got to be very careful grabbing these pawns down here. If I had my pawn up on e3, by the way, then the queen would already be 100% trapped. But it's almost better that this square is safe, because that means that I can just win the queen outright. And it's like, if my pawn was there, queen b5 wouldn't be played. I would get the queen but lose the knight. Because the pawn is here, he feels safe playing queen b5, attacking my knight. But then he loses a whole queen. So it could work out against him here. But yeah, there's not really going to be any... And this is why I always say, one of the easiest things to just make you immediately a better player is just don't develop your queen. Don't move it so early. It's very simple. Everyone has this infatuation like, oh yeah, the queen's the strongest piece. I'm going to bring that piece out immediately. It's going to be my first piece developed. I'm going to bring my strongest piece out. It's like, no, there are much less valuable pieces on the board that are simply going to attack you, not let you do anything. You have to use that piece in conjunction with your other pieces. Can't use her on her own. So you really can. This is exactly what I expected to happen. This square is absolutely safe. And it attacks my knight. So like I said, because the pawn's not there on e3, that's a safe square. Well, it's not really safe. It's not really safe, I'm sorry to say. Knight c7, and I mean, this is already a pretty nasty fork, but knight takes b5, and there isn't much else to say. Black brought the queen out, and then went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 moves with the queen. 6 moves. And then lost it. Right? 6 queen moves. We've only played 12 moves. Half of them have been with the queen for my opponent. I mean, that's not good enough. That is not good enough. Let's save our piece. I didn't even realize that this opening has a name. I can't believe they even bothered to name it. So knight f3, e5 has a name. Do you want to know what the name of this opening is? It's the Ross Gambit. Ross Gambit. What an insult to everyone out there named Ross. Holy smokes. It's just like one of the worst things to be named after. Sorry, Ross. Do we have anyone named Ross watching right now? Just apologies on behalf of your opening. You know, there's one thing I've noticed about chess. Some of the worst openings are always named after individuals. Like the worst openings by the computer evaluation. All of the good openings are named after like places or countries. You know, right? Like the French, the London, the English. There's actually an opening called the Fred. Have you ever heard of it? The Fred. It's a terrible opening. And then you've got the Ross. Another awful opening. Then you've got the Jerome. One of the greatest openings ever. I mean, somehow these people got the short end of the stick. It's always an individual. Whenever it's a good opening, it's named after a conglomerate. Whenever it's a questionable opening, it's named after one guy. They're like, all right, this is your opening. You deal with it. I'm playing e4 here to get my other bishop out. And because, you know, if the pawn takes, my knight will recapture and hit the bishop. Again, another like little opening habit my opponent can develop is not to put the bishop on that square in front of the pawn. It's not a good feeling. It would be like me playing bishop e3. Then it kind of blocks my e-pawn. My other bishop can't develop. It's just not a good feeling. So these are some simple kind of habits that will improve my opponent's game. Now e5, and why is this fork happening? Because that bishop is there and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. I just want to play, you know, my bishop out, get castled here. It's a lot of material that my opponent's going to be down. A queen, now a piece as well. keep in mind that if you ever fork somebody and then they pin your pawn, you know, for the most part, you just unpinning yourself will reinstate the threat. So you'll still be winning a piece. So don't ever get the impression that rook e8 somehow saves your opponent in these situations or makes your threat invalid. Just invalidates it for one move. You play a move like that, and then you'll be winning a piece on the next move. But there are so many small things here. Like, obviously, e5 is not a good opening. I mean, you're just down a center pawn, clearly. But f5 is another just bad habit. I would much rather have seen my opponent, yes, you lost the pawn, so what? d5, take the center, right? Knight f6, bring the knight out, get your bishop out, and castle. That would have set my opponent up for a much longer game and a much better game than the one he played. Instead, we see f5, and then we see the queen come out. A little bit too hasty, right? A little bit too hasty. And then my opponent just plays queen move after queen move to the point where he just loses the entire queen. And that's not going to happen if the queen stays at home. I mean, it sounds obvious, but don't put yourself in a situation where things can go wrong. Things statistically go wrong when you bring your queen out early. That's why people don't do it. So this game was just a collection of very small things that can be fixed immediately, but you just need to be told. Don't move your f-pawn, right? Just play without moving your f-pawn as white or as black, right? When you're starting out at the very beginning, this is the most tender pawn, most tender square, most tender diagonal. You don't need to open it up to start off. So it's like, it's kind of nice to avoid. Then bringing their queen out. Do not bring your queen out early. As you can see, it just gets harassed. In this case, it got trapped and it got won for free. Very, very bad. And then the last part is, yeah, don't put your bishops out on these two squares and block your center pawns. You want your center pawns to move forward. Black's pawn wants to be here, or at least on d6, so that both bishops can develop. But yeah, you really don't want to block your center pawns like that. And because the bishop was there, it fell victim to yet another fork, another threat. And that's why my opponent lost so quickly. It seemed quick, at least, but I'm sure that the game would have been much better and much longer if he fixes those three things. So the good part about, you know, being new at chess or just starting is that you're going to be doing so many things so obviously wrong that they're easy to fix. If you're a GM, it's very, very hard to improve your game because things aren't, it's not like a GM is just, oh, you're trading your bishop for your opponent's knight too much. Just don't do that. And then you'll be 100 points higher rated. It's like, no, that doesn't exist anymore. But if I tell 500 to not develop their queen until they've developed their knights and they've castled, that will improve them by 100 points. So it's, you know, it is a little bit easier to improve when you're starting out. So at least make the most of that. GG. GG.